Hey, welcome to another live stream. This is going to be again non-structured content, not much pre-planned. So if you are looking for to learn something more specific or to watch more structured content, then you can look for my other videos for that. Today we are just going to be talking about whatever you ask or what I can think about to show you about Ruby and programming and some nice tips and things like that, and answer your questions looking at your code. If you want to show your code, well, you can do that. Okay. So let's do something here. How about someone asked yesterday in an email to me. I get many emails from people asking Ruby questions. And the question was about someone who was coming from another language and wanted to come from this other language. I don't remember what language it is. I think it's Java something or C#. He wants to come into Ruby. He asked me how to do something in Ruby. Well, I think if you know another language or if you learn Ruby, many of the things you learn are going to apply into other languages, not the specifics or of the syntax of the methods, but the general ideas. Here's what I mean. If you want to read a file, you know there has to be some kind of way, some kind of process to read that file, right? I know it's very simple, but some people don't think about that. Or if you want to, as you will see in this example, parse a string, so that means extract information or meaning out of a file or a string, then there has to be a way to do that, and typically in most programming languages we do this using regular expressions. So if regular expressions, the concept of regular expressions, that translates through languages, right? So yeah, when you know one language really well, a lot of the concepts they can translate into other languages if you need to, right? Because you're going to be looking, okay, how can I do this into this other language? Even if it's not the exact same way to do it, the concept translates. So that's why it's fine to go all into one language when you're getting started. Okay, so I'm just going to do an example here. How about one.txt? Okay. And this, if you don't know this editor, I use this for simple things like this called VI or Vim. Okay, this is a terminal-based editor. I use for simple things. For bigger projects, because you have to manage more files and folders, I find a GUI editor, a visual editor, where I can use my mouse in everything, and menus, easier to use. But if I'm only editing one file, like a configuration file or a simple script, or maybe I'm on a server and I want to change something very quickly, like I said, a configuration script, or I want to maybe look at some logs besides the less command, you can also use VI because it has a search option. It's also good for replace, search and replace. It has regular expressions built in if you want to, for search and replace. So that's a few of the things I wanted to comment, because people always ask, what editor are you using? Well, I answer that the first thing. So I'm going to be reading comments from time to time. Okay, we have a comment from Mr. Piano A Freak. I hope that's the correct pronunciation. I'm looking, by the way, at comments on another screen. In here we're going to have the thing. But first, let me read the comment. Okay, so we have, how can I leverage Ruby to wait for commands in terminal? For example, if I'm writing a simple task that pushes my code on GitHub, would I listen for password and username and answer them in Ruby or bundle it the code? Okay, well, there are different ways to wait in Ruby. So let me just exit this. So if I open IRE, the simple thing to wait is you can just say sleep. And sleep means if we just wait for a number of seconds. For example, sleep 5 is going to wait for 5 seconds. Now, while you're sleeping, the program is doing that. It's sleeping. It's not doing anything. But when it comes back, it will keep running, right? So you could have one way. It's not the ideal way, but it could work. Is you have a loop, like a while loop, or something like that, right? And then you can have a sleep inside it. So we keep checking. So let me do some kind of pseudocode for you. So it will look something like this. While whatever condition you have, and it's just a placeholder for your condition, right? Then you do the check, so check thing. Then you would sleep for whatever time you want to sleep, depends how often you want to check. And for example, let's say 5 seconds. Then you are done, because when it ends sleeping, it's going to go back to the start of the loop. It's going to check the thing again, and then it's going to back to sleep for 5 seconds. Okay, so that's one way you can create this waiting condition. There are other ways if you are waiting on a shortcut, or that means a shortcut is how you connect to another computer through the network, right? So you have local network, so it means the computers that attach to your router or your switch, however your home or work local setup of computers, like your office is set up. There will be a local network. Then we have a remote network like the internet, right? So to connect to this other host or computers, you need sockets. And to wait on a socket, there is something special to do that, which is called the select. The select. So there is IO select. Now that takes more time to explain. It's more specialized, but this for anything that's a socket. I think that also works for files. Yeah, that also works if you're waiting for a file to be available for reading or for writing. I believe you can also use this select. And this select with this you can also implement a waiting mechanism. And what it does, it goes to sleep, similar to this, but instead of time, it will wait for the operating system to tell it when the socket or the file is available, right? So the operating system is going to tell you, hey, this socket has new data, meaning the other host, the other computer, the server sent new data and it's not available for you to read it, right? Or it can also happen the other way. The socket is not ready for you to write new data, right? So usually you will do that with something like select. Like I say, it has this more complex to explain. You can look up the documentation for this. So for anything you want to learn for Ruby, you can do a few things. You can look for a tutorial, or you can look for a guide, like in my site, rubyguides.com. If you scroll all the way down, you go to all posts, you can find a lot of articles in here. I have one where I explain about sockets and how to use them. I think its title is Ruby Network Programming. Ruby Network Programming is the title of that article where I talk about sockets. I don't think I explained select. I don't remember, but you can search for that. You can also go to the Ruby documentation. The thing about the documentation is very helpful, but it's not built to explain you exactly why is this helpful or how to use this in a bigger picture kind of thing, right? Or where does it come from, or how is it related to other things. So it doesn't explain a lot of things, the documentation. What it does, it gives you a description, right? It also tells you if this method does indeed exist, right? So you can do select, and we know that it exists. There are different versions, and there are different versions because this attached to different classes. So you see the method name first, and then in parentheses you see the name of the class that this method belongs to, because methods belong to classes, right? In this case, we will click here because we are interested in IO, which means input, output, okay? Yeah, as you can see, it's a complex method. But what the documentation does that well is it tells you, okay, you have these methods, these operations, these commands available. Here is the method signature, meaning this what parameters it takes, and here is what it's going to give you as a result, right? So you see this arrow, it means this what calling this method will give you. It will give you an array in this case, and this is what it needs, right? So this is what it needs, this is what it gives you. Just basically, in here you can see it needs a name, it needs this optional, it gives you always a string, right? Or it could be an exception, but exceptions are sometimes explained, but not always. It also gives you a description and an example, okay? So there is that. So there is the mostly, and then if what you want to do is also try it after you learn, you read the guide, you read the documentation, and you have a general idea how it works. Just write some code. You need to do a big project and add this to a big project. Just isolate the learning. Open IRB, which is what this is for learning and figure out how stuff works, trying out stuff, debugging, right? So use open up IRB or Pry, if you know Pry, which I explain in my Ruby book, okay? And just play with it, okay? So that's the two main ways to do this waiting condition. You can do this while with a slip, starts a loop with a slip, or you can do something like a select. It depends on exactly the details of what you're doing. For a terminal, you can also use, for a terminal application, you can use also the get method. So if I type get right here on IRB, you will see it's waiting. But what is it waiting for? In here, we're waiting for time. In here, we're waiting for the operating system to tell us that something is available. So these different forms of waiting. And in here, we're waiting for the user to type something. So this is only useful for a terminal application like this. IRB is a terminal application. A terminal application means that you are typing, you are interacting directly with the user through this terminal, through commands, right? Through the keyboard. It's not a web application, it's terminal application. In here you can use get, and you're waiting for the user to type something. So I can type hello YouTube, and when you type something, press enter, right? Then it ends the waiting and it gives you whatever the user type as a string, right? So that's another form of waiting, this get method. And you can also, I have also a guide about this in my site. It's on there, you can find it in Google. If you Google for Ruby gets method, I think you will find it. Or you can go for my full list of posts, okay? So that's yet another way of waiting. So I hope that helps. Let me know if you have other questions. Remember to click the like button and subscribe to the channel if you find this helpful, so more people can find this video, okay? And so we can grow the Ruby community together. Okay, so next question from Giri Dahan. I want to become a good Ruby on Rails developer. I love Ruby on Rails. I have 8 months of experience in Ruby on Rails. Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good. So what's the question? Giri Dahan. Piano Freak, thank you, but I'm looking for a simple Ruby code. I can predict the question. Terminal, we ask and provide answers. The terminal, we ask. Question is not coming from your application. The question is coming from terminal. I didn't quite understand exactly how that works. I think I know what you mean. Yes. When when you mean, yeah, I that's quite complicated. I think you may be able to read the output from the program. So if you look for, I have an article called Ruby System here, and here explain sleep. Of course, I explain something about here this popen method. I think you can use that. So you can read the output from another program. Here I'm reading something like popen or popen free. Let's see. So here we're writing to IRB. We should be able to also read from it. See here, we are reading from the output. So you can read and write if you open the process from Ruby, and then you can read and write like this. But specifically for GitHub, I believe they have something. They must have. There is something. Yes, there is something called. Git hooks thing. Look this up. Maybe it is what you're looking for. These Git hooks. Okay, so yeah, look into that, into the hooks. You can look on the popen. If you launch your program like this, you have control over the input and the output. So maybe it is what you need. Give it a try. Again, to find this, search for Ruby system on Google. It's like the first entry. And the title is called How to Run System Commands from Ruby. Okay, this is my website. Okay, does that help? Now we have new comment from Disturbing Night. Hi Jesus, should I store procs in separate file like module? No, you shouldn't. Procs and lambdas go in the same, wherever you're going to use it, right? So there is a difference between procs and lambdas. If you don't know that, explain it in my book. I think it's also on the website. And you don't want to make like a library of procs or lambdas. That doesn't make much sense. In that case, I think it's better to make methods, and then you can save these methods on a module, right? So you have a lambda f, for example, right? So it doesn't do anything, so we get nil. You don't want to make like a file of lambdas, and I never seen that. I've never done that in many years of Ruby. So just use them wherever you're in the actual place where you're going to use them in the same file. I wouldn't expect to go to other file to find a lambda. A class, yes. A method, maybe, but a lambda or a proc, no. Okay. Thanks a lot. I will look into the hooks. Okay. I should look into that, into the popen method. There's also another that's similar called popen3, which gives you access to standard input, standard output, and standard error. Okay. So next, any other questions? Okay, so we're going to go here and show what I was going to show you, which is this file. So someone asked on an email, how do you work with a file, something like this? Have A1, B2, C3. And then we have more lines like this. So all of the lines look like this, right? And A, B, and C can be other things, right? It doesn't have to be A, B, and C. It can be user, email, and password, for example. I'm just doing A, B, C because it's easier to type. And we don't have to think about a specific concept. So let's say you have all of these lines like this. What do you do? Well, there are different ways to handle this. The first thing, of course, we need to read in the file. We need to read in the file so we can read the contents of the file. So that's going to be the first step before even we think how we can get these b's. Maybe you want to get an array of out of the b values or out of the c values. Before we think about that, let's get the contents of the file. That's the first step, right? You want to go step by step. Don't get overwhelmed by not knowing how to get to the final result. Just think, what's one thing I can do right now? What's just one thing I can do right now to get closer to what I need to do, to what I want. Well, the one thing we can do here is read in the content of the file, and that is enough, right? You can save the file. We can open something like pry, and then we can read in the contents, and that's just simply file read one txt. Like this. So we have our contents. And we see it is a whole string like this. And from here we can decide, do we want to work with the individual lines? Do we want to work with individual lines, which are these? Lines are separated by the new line character, which is this /n. It's a special character. It's called a control character, I believe. It means new line. Here we have two new lines because I had an empty line, right? So we decide, do we want to work with the whole string or line by line? Well, if we want the whole string, we can go into the next step already. If we want line by line, which is easy, it might be easier to work with, then we can break down this into lines. One way to do that is we can do split, and that's actually very nice already, because that's not line by line. It's like all of these split into their own thing, its own unit. And it's doing this because split is going to break down the string by the spaces, and that includes the new line character. But if we wanted the line, there are different things we can do. We can do this, right? And there goes our lines. And I think we can do this. Yeah. The problem with this is that we still have the new line character, and we probably don't want that. So usually I don't do lines because of that, because now we have to remove this character. If to split we remove the character, so we get cleaner lines. So if we wanted line by line, then we can do this, and now we get the content like it is in the file itself, right? And here I like this one because, well, it depends now how you work with this data. It depends on what your next step is going to be. If you want to do this thing where we want to group up the data by the letter, like we want to group up all of the A's with all of the other A's. We want to group all of the B's with all of the other B's. Then I think this is probably the best format for us to take the next step, right? So from here, we can say, okay, if I take one of these, let's say I take A7, how do I break this down into A and 7? Well, again, split is our friend. So I can do split. What I'm going to be splitting by? Any guesses? Well, the colon, right? Because that's what's in the middle. That's what separating these two elements. And now we get 8 and 7. Okay? So knowing this, we can apply this to our list of this. And we can do something like, let's see. I think we can do group by, because we said that we want to group this by the letter, right? We can do group by. We're going to take in each of these entries or columns or elements. Let's call this I for item. And let's do what we learned here. Okay. And we are going to be grouping by the first of the two. So 0, because remember when we did this, what do we get? We get an array with 2 elements. Now I want to reference the first element, so I do index 0. Okay? So there we go. Now we're grouping the items by the letter. As you can see here, we have a hash, and you can tell this a hash because we have these brackets. And when we have a square brackets, these are an array. And that's how we got to group up our elements. So we have from Giri Dharan, use of proc and lambda in what? Where are you going to use proc and lambda? In what? Okay, so that's how we take the file, which looks just like this, right? You've seen my thought process. I look for the first thing I can do, which is read the file. If you're working with a file, the first thing is going to be read the file. You don't need to overcomplicate things like a lot of people do. Just keep it simple, right? Keep it simple. And one step at a time. Also, this applies to learning. If you're learning something complicated, then also keep it simple and one step at a time. That's important. And then we explore from here, notice that we explore a few different options for breaking down this into more manageable format, right? We explore a few options like this split, this lines, or this other version of split with an argument. Drinking some coffee. By the way, you want a health tip? If you drink coffee, especially if you drink a lot, 2 things: drink less and don't put sugar in it, because sugar is going to make you fat. Also, it's not very good for your body if you take a lot of sugar. So you want to reduce your sugar intake? Yes, this health tip time, because I think it's important. But if you still want to make your coffee sweet or somewhat sweet, you can use stevia. I know that some people don't like stevia, but I think it takes some getting used to if you don't like it. And there is also different forms of stevia. You have liquid stevia, have stevia tablets, and you have stevia powder. And sometimes they mix stevia with stuff that's not stevia. So look at the label. That's another health tip. Look at the label of stuff you purchase. Okay, very important. Look at the label. Get used to look at the label. Otherwise, you don't know what you're putting in your body, right? and what you put in your body is going to affect your ability to write code and to think and to learn. So that's why it's very important. So yeah, that's the health tip of the day. Okay, so let's go back. Use of program Lambda in Ruby. Okay, before I answer that, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you can get more videos like this, and click the like button for me, and also visit my website rubyguides.com so you can get a lot of Ruby tutorials to help you become a professional Ruby developer. Now, to answer the question, use of proc and lambda in Ruby. Okay, so let's do that. So we have procs, right? You can do procs like this, and procs must have a block, right? As you can see here, try to create a block object without a block. So if you're not familiar with block, I'm not going to go into the details of that you can read that in my book, right? It's a Ruby basic. You can't go into Rails before knowing this. I will say that again. You can't go seriously into Rails with understanding what a block is, what a proc is, what methods are. In fact, if you don't know the general idea for a method, don't even get my book yet. You don't have the very basics, right? Because I explain a lot about methods in my book, and I assume you already know that. But it's very, very basic. It's like 5-year-old level of basic that you need to know what a method is, know how they work or what methods are available yet, but at least know what the general concept is, okay, and where they come from. So say that, sorry, I went a little tangent because of this, but we have procs, and we also have, there is another older way to create them like this. You say proc. You don't see this very often, so you might never seen this before, but I know this is an option because I have been doing Ruby for very long, and of course I teach Ruby. I wrote the Ruby books. I know these kind of things. I don't know everything, but I thought I would mention that. Also, you can create lambdas, right? And these are very similar. As you see, the object is, when you see this, don't panic. This just means you got an object. In Ruby, is everything about objects. And this is the class that the object comes from, right? So notice when I create a lambda, which the syntax is completely different, looks like an arrow like this, right? We also get a proc object, but it's a special proc object. That's why it says lambda here in parentheses, okay? So use of them. Well, a lambda is basically an anonymous method. That's why I mention methods as well. If you don't know the basic concept of a method, then you also, to understand blocks, lambdas and procs, you need to understand that, because this is anonymous. Anonymous means has no name, right? Method has a name. We say define whatever method, define read a book, and that's the name of the method, right? But if I define a lambda, the closest that you get to a name is the variable, if we assign it to a variable, but you don't have to. So what can you do inside the lambda? Basically, you do the kind of things that you do inside a method, but let me show you an example. In here, we put our argument, for example, x. We can do x times 2, right? And now if I call this lambda, we call it differently than a method. And there are different ways to call a lambda. Yes, because Ruby is very flexible. So I really love Ruby for its flexibility. So you can do 1, and we get 2. Why? Why do you think we get 2? Well, because inside my block here, say x times 2, x times 2. I'm taking x as an argument, and whatever x is, I'm going to return it times 2. And notice that unlike other languages, you don't have to say return. So in other languages, you have to say return to actually return the value. But in here, you don't have to. That's another reason to love and use Ruby. So whatever I give in into the Lambda, I get twice as that. Why? Because that's what the code is saying. That's what the block is saying right here, right? So that's one way to use it. You might also see it used like this, right? You can do dot call, then the argument 5, and there we go. So that's the basic use of lambdas and procs. And if you have a proc instead of this, so let's say we do proc new, the same thing happens. You use hold on, yeah, we need to refine the syntax is different, just like that. Now we can call it the same way, okay, like this or like this. There are other ways, but this is basically the ways that we can use the procs and lambdas. Now, where we use this? We use this basically in methods like each. So if I have 1, 2, 3, each, in here, basically, Ruby creates a proc. You will notice that the syntax is the same as here, right? This syntax, this a block, this a block. You don't say proc.new because basically Ruby is doing that for you, right? Then in Rails, there is you will use lambdas very often for things like validations, things like that. You can use for scopes. If you don't know scopes, of course I have videos and articles for pretty much everything I talk about. Have either an article or I have a video or explain it in the book or explain it somewhere, right? Or you can find it in the documentation. So you have plenty of resources to find details about this. So one thing I wanted to mention is do your research, because the programming is it takes work. Don't expect I'm working with the computer, it's going to be easy. No, it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of thinking, and it takes research. If you're not willing to do that, then get out of programming. That's just the truth. That's what I think. So you think it's going to be easy just because you are with the computer? It's going to be easy going? No, it takes work. You have to be willing to put in the work, to do the research. That means searching in Google, spending time searching on Google, spending time searching on my website, the articles, spending time on the documentation, spending time on IRB, on Pry, researching, taking notes, practicing. Even as a working Ruby developer, you're going to be doing this kind of stuff, right? So back to my point, and yes, I said this was going to be unstructured content, so that I know that I'm going to on tangents, but they are relevant tangents, right? They are relevant rabbit holes to expand on what I'm talking about. Give me a moment to take another sip of coffee. So yeah, lambdas are often used in scopes. I don't remember the exact syntax for a scope, but we can look that up. Scope. Let's see, a lambda. There it goes. That's a lambda. right there. You see that? So that's how we use it. Notice that the parenthesis is optional. So in here I use some parentheses. But if you don't have arguments, it's optional. I think even with arguments, it's optional. Let's figure that out. Yeah. So the parentheses are optional. I like them if you have arguments. Just like in methods, if you have arguments, I like parentheses. Yeah? So I hope that answers your questions. I try to cover all of the points that you need to know. What is a lambda? I show you that you can create an approx. You can create it like this. I explain this form of the block and the optional arguments. I explain the relationship between the lambda proc and the method. Mostly this is anonymous method, right? Explain how to use them, right there. I explain where we use them. Things like here and scopes, right? And why we use them? Because for this, we only want to be defining a method. So it allows you to send some code to be run later, right? So this, like, we can save a little piece of code and we can send this anywhere. It's like we're packaging, we're putting in a box a little bit of code and we're sending that box with the code to this scope method, right? And then when we use the scope, Ruby is going to take that box, look what's inside and use that code, right? And there's going to keep saving that box with the code inside for later. So I hope that analogy is that for you. We don't need a method for that. We can just simply use lambdas because this is what they're designed for. Okay, so I hope that answers your question thoroughly. Please click the like button if you found that helpful. And you might also want to consider getting a copy of my Ruby book right here to go deeper into these topics. Okay. What else do we have here? Method def self-include base. Yeah. What about that? Disturbing night? What do you mean by method def self-include base? Do you want me to explain that, or is you see when you are on the comments? If you want to get a good answer, pay attention here. If you want a good answer, you need to make a good question. That means at least put whatever you want to know in the form of a question. So that means let me give an example. What does X do? That's a question. Notice I'm using what, asking a specific thing, what I want to know about it, and then question mark. It is like basic grammar, I know, but it seems like we don't think how asking a question properly really helps me understand what you want, so I can give you a proper answer, right? Or how does X work? Or what would you recommend for doing X? Because I tried Y and it doesn't, and it's obsolete apparently. Something like that. You get the idea. Or here is a link to my code. Can you take a look and tell me how to improve it? Thank you. These kind of questions is what you should be asking if you want to get a good answer. Because if you throw in something in, I think you are going lazy, and I don't want lazy people in here. Okay? There is no place for lazy people in the Ruby guides or Ruby world in general. Okay, so next. There I request tutorials for grabbing Ruby and Rails of an existing app. Okay, Karma one chunk. What version of Rails are you working with? And that's not really a question, by the way. Like I just explained. So again, question starts with what, how, why. No, that's basic, but it needs to be explained. It's not only for me, it's for others. If you go to work in a team, you need to ask questions properly, or you're not going to last very long in that job, okay? So it's really for you. What, how, where. I know it's basic, but it needs to be repeated apparently. Where, why, right? Basic question starters. And then you explain what is it, end with a question mark, and maybe you add some additional information. Because this, or this, I'm trying to do this. If you explain to me also, or to the other person, or I tried this, and this what happened, right? That's how you make a helpful question. Okay, if you tell me how to protect an XLX file password in Ruby, okay. There is a gem for that, I think. Ruby XL gem. Again, what I mentioned, research. Research has to be part of. So I welcome questions, but you need to put them in the proper format. Demonstrate that you think about the question, not just want me to do the work for you, right? So you can see we get some gems that may be able to do this for you. So this works with Excel SSX versions, LibreOffice, CSV, Excel, Google Spreadsheet. So and here we have some examples of how to use it. Now, does it support passwords? I don't know. So let's do a search. It seems like it does support OpenN and OpenOffice, LibreOffice passwords. Doesn't say anything about adding the password. So there is that. You might want to go into the documentation for the gem and see if we can find more information. Let's see, password, add, doesn't seem like it can do that, but then we can dig deeper into this, or we can try another gem. We see it seems to be fairly decent, the latest comment. You want to check this. And we can do the same thing. Let's see if we have that. Doesn't seem to be a search for password. So we can do documentation. Where is the docs? More examples. Okay. Image, hyperlink, filters, color chart, logo. Full documentation. Okay. Password. No matches. So it's not looking good for your adding password into an Excel file. Maybe you will have better luck adding the Excel file into like a gzip file. Ruby zip password. Maybe you have better look here. Zip Ruby. It works perfectly, apparently. Seems to be old, but there might be a newer version of this. So you can try this. Might be not ideal, but I think it might get you there. Oh, 19 years, days ago. So I think you can zip your Excel file and then put a password into the zip file. No, that's not probably ideal, but it might be a workaround. Another thing you can do is what I was explaining before, is find another program external to Ruby, like an external program that does this, and then you can do the system. Right? You can go to this article I showed earlier, and from here you can run the system. You can run the external command to add the password. Okay. So that's how I will go about that. So any other questions? And here you can take this further. So into another step, to next step, you can process this more. The way to do this is we can do method like transform values. Here we have a block. We get our item again, but this time we're going to get the one index, and we're going to convert this into integer, like that. Okay. So we need to map. So yeah, there's going to be a little bit more complicated here. So we need to map, and therefore each element, so there's going to be an array, there's going to be, for each element, we're going to split it there. So that will get us only the numbers. See, I did another step into this processing, and now we got the numbers. If we wanted the sum of the numbers, we can also do that, like that. Okay? Questions? Comments, feedback, anything? Well, I'm going to take a quick break and see if there are any other questions, or if you want to share your code for a free code review, which I think is very valuable, because a code review can show you what you're doing wrong. And if you show that code to someone and that code is no good, then they're going to think that you have no idea what you're doing, right? So I think it's very valuable to get a code review. So if you want that code review, just drop a link to your project on GitHub, or if it's a single file, you can use something like Gist or something like that. We take a look here live and give you my opinion. Or if you simply have questions, you can also ask your questions. Okay. So be right back. Quick break. Okay. Let's see if we got any comments going on. No new comments I can see. So what do you want me to talk about right now? Because I don't have what I was prepared for to talk about, just this, because someone asked on an email about this, right? Yes, ask. I'm planning to go from this other language into Ruby. I want to learn how can you do this, right? How can you take file that looks like that? And remember, this doesn't have to be A or B. This could be user, email and password, or whatever other thing. And this doesn't have to be colons. It could be commas. Doesn't really matter, because if you understand the process here, whatever format this takes, you can process it. Sure. 1 second. You can process it, and this process is called parsing. When we are making meaning out of data, that means parsing. We are breaking it down into pieces that have some meaning for us, right? That's basically what parsing is. And the process usually involves that you read your data. This can be a file, this could even be an API, right? It doesn't have to be a file. Then you break it down, and after that you can break it down more or put into a hash. There's different ways to do that. You can map it. You just applying a series of transformations step by step to get to the place where you want this data to be. Like, for example, maybe we want it to be like this, right? Then that's fine, then we're done, if that's the final step that we need. Usually we need a few more steps, which we can achieve like this, right? So there is that. We have a comment from Renan Bona. Hello, Renan Bona, good to see you. Hey, Jesus. First of all, I want to congratulate you for all the content in Ruby that you share. Well, thank you. It really helps me in my day work. Yeah, thanks for your comment. I'm glad it helps you. What kind of projects do you work on? Or if you can or want to share anything about that? Also, earlier in this stream, I shared someone asked about how to wait, different ways of waiting, because I wasn't sure about the context, because here's another thing about asking questions, especially programming questions. You don't know that I'm lacking the context that you have. You are taking it for granted that this information is already known because you know it, right? But when you are asking a question, especially for more complex questions, you need to communicate this context. So here's what I mean. If you get an error message, don't just give me one line of code, or me or your team when you're working on a team. Don't just give one line of code. Try to give the full error message. try to explain how you got to that error, what happened before. Can you reproduce this error? That's very important. When you're trying to fix an error, you want to be able to reproduce the error. That means you can make the error happen again on demand, right? Because if you can reproduce this error, you can make it happen again and again and again doing the same things. That means we have a deterministic error. That means it doesn't change. It's not based on randomness. There is not a random element in this error. That's already good information to have, right? Besides that, it's very important to have this way to reproduce the error following the same steps, because that allows you to know if you are fixing it correctly, right? Because you're going to be making a hypothesis about what's wrong, what's happening based on the error message on your code, what you read on your code. You're making a hypothesis, just like scientists do. We're computer science here, scientists, right? We are going to make a hypothesis. What's wrong? You're going to test it. You're going to design an experiment, right? About what's wrong. That means you're going to think, okay, I'm going to change this variable, or I'm going to check the value for this variable because I think it might be wrong. That's your hypothesis. And the test could be, okay, I'm going to print the value. We're going to change this variable. We're going to change this method. I'm going to do whatever. That's your test. Then you actually do it. That's the experiment, right? You do the experiment. This is called the scientific method, by the way, if you're familiar with that. Scientific method. With the experiment, you get some results, right? The results is going to tell you if your experiment was successful or not. It's fine either way. The point is to learn something. Based on that, you know how you are going to know is because you are able to reproduce the error. If you do the reproduction steps and the error still happens, then what you did didn't fix the error. Maybe it gave you some additional information, but it didn't fix the error, right? So having a way to reproduce the error, it tells you if you fix it, or if you're making progress toward fixing it. So it's important that you share details, context, so the full error message, screenshots if you can, share what you were doing before, how to reproduce the error, your version of Rails, your version of Ruby, if you have made any changes to your Rails configuration, because sometimes we made a change to our configuration and we don't remember that we made a change, right? And then that's what is making the thing not work, right? I very recently saw this on a question on Twitter. Someone had active storage not working, and the reason ended up being that he changed configuration option. He changed a configuration option from the default, and this configuration option was basically disable active storage. So of course, it wasn't working. So yeah, you want to look out for these things. Also, you might want to share what you have tried so far, what you have tried, other errors, different errors you might have gotten. I need the ideas that you have, why this is not working. Values, if there are variables involved, what values these variables have. All of this information. You might have the full error message, but if I can't see it, then it's not helpful, right? So that's what I mean by context. And we're going to go meta here, which means I'm going to explain something about this thing I was explaining, right? It's like one level above. So the context for this, for explaining the context, is in asking questions, right? Or communicating with your team members. If you are able to communicate effectively with your team members or with your boss or with your clients, whatever you're doing, you're going to be speaking with someone, communicating with someone. You can't possibly avoid that, right? You're going to have to communicate, to talk with someone. It's very important that you explain things clearly. And one way to do that is to give context and explain what's going on. And don't make assumptions about what the other person knows. We have some Renan Bonnegan. I work at CodeMiner 42. I've been working with Ruby and Ruby on Rails about 2 years now. Okay, cool. Can you talk a little bit about how Ruby garbage collector works? Yes, that's very technical topic. In fact, I wrote about it. I have a little book that I never released because I don't know, it's too technical, because it goes deep into garbage collector and things like that. But basically, there have been multiple versions of the garbage collector. First, let me start with what it is for people that are not familiar with it. Usually, garbage collector, we abbreviate it to GC, garbage collector, right? And what this is a memory management system, right? Memory management. So other languages like C, so plain C language, you have to manage your own memory. That means that if I create a string like hello YouTube, Ruby is fun, to be able to create this string, I need to manually ask for memory. I have to ask for memory from the operating system to be able to save this string, to create this string in the memory of your computer. So Ruby does this automatically for you. It creates, it reserves and requests memory and releases memory. So specifically, the job of the garbage collector is called that way because it releases memory when it's no longer being used. What's one example of that? Can you come up with one example of that? Well, local variables. So if I create a method, I'm going to call it coconut, for example. I have a local variable called food equals apple, right? Now, what happens when I call coconut? This string is being created, which means we're going to be needing some memory. So Ruby does the work for you, managing this memory. But when the method ends, in here, method is done, right? This local variable is gone as well. In this case, not, because we're returning it, so apple still exists. But if I change this method, let's do food apple, and then I do here a 1, so we don't return apple. Now when I call coconut, this apple is created, and then it's no longer used. So it's still in memory, this string, this apple is still in memory, although it shouldn't be because it's a local variable. Local variables, as you know, they only exist within the method that they are defined. That's why they're called local variables. Now, here's where the GC comes in. The GC, is going to run periodically, and it's going to clean up these strings or objects, any objects, in fact. It's going to clean up these objects, and it's going to release that memory. Because what happens if you never release memory? Well, your program is going to grow and 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 grow. It's going to take the full memory of your computer, and that might result in a crash, or the computer really slowing down a lot, right? Because there is no more memory to create. And it also result in errors to say, okay, no more memory available, so we can't create more objects. So that's what happens if you don't release memory. But you don't have to do this manually. Ruby does this for you, and that's the garbage collection system, right? That's memory management system. Now, there is a GC class. Whoops, not like that. GC class. This class has a few methods that allow us to see how the garbage collection is working. Okay, so I think we can get stats or stat there. Whoa, that's a lot of info, right? As you can see. So here is a lot of info. This internal information about how this memory management system is doing its work, right? So to get this, I use GC stat, okay? So this gets you all of this information about the garbage collector. And the easier, I'm just going to go over the easier ones to understand here, okay? The easier ones to understand here is this count 43. So this, how many times has the garbage collection run? How many times has the garbage collection run since you started this particular Ruby process? So in this case, since I started Prime, the garbage collection has run 43 times. Now you can manually, if you want, you don't have to do this, but if you want, you can run the garbage collection manually. Start, no, not run, start. Yeah, there we go. So this just run the garbage collector, and you will see, hold on, start. You will see this increase, this count increase, because we run the garbage collection with GC start. I actually run one more time on its own. So this runs on its own. It's not based on a timer, it's based on how much memory you're using, right? When you start running out of memory, then the GC will run. Basically, that's the basic idea. So I hope that gives you an introduction about the garbage collection. And there is a lot of things. It's quite complicated, the newest version. It has been evolving. That's one thing I wanted to mention. It has been evolving. Now we have something called, I don't remember the name now, but it has a name, and implements, it's not run, it's start and stat. It has been evolving and improving, so it becomes more efficient, because what happens when the GC runs, everything stops. So you probably don't notice this. You can't really see this, but everything stops. This is called stop the world, right? If you research about garbage collection, you might read this word, stop the world. That means everything stops, because you can't be making new objects when the GC is running. That's going to result into problems. That's why everything stops. So this everything stops, it's a problem for performance, right? it's a problem for your performance. That's why they're having improvements in the garbage collector to make it stop less, right? Make these stops last less time. So instead of stopping like this, let's say this time stop, newer versions are more like this, right? It stops less time. And then from time to time, it's going to stop. It's going to do a longer stopping, right? So this is going to make it so it doesn't take so long processing and releasing memory. So there is that. Of course, there is a lot more to this, but that will take a long time to explain. But I hope this gives you an overview of how it works. There's also a few environment variables you can set to change the GC, the garbage collector. There are environment variables you can set to change the limits, and by limits I mean how often is it going to run. It's going to run very often or less often. Is it going to allow bigger objects, smaller objects, things like that. So I hope that gives you a quick overview of how that works. Okay, we have some more. May you please look and explain what does this method over here? Yeah. So self-include base, yes. So we have def self-include base. Yes, I can explain that. So we can break this down, okay? First, this is a method, right? And we know this is a method because we are defining it. Def means define, right? You probably know that, but some other people might not know. Second, the method is called include. So we have two things. It's a method. I'm just breaking it down very slowly so everyone can understand. It's called include. So far, everyone should be able to get that, right? Next, we have this self. So this is another part. It means we are working with a class method. So it's not only a method, but it's also a class method. It's a class method. So we know these three things. It's a method, what kind of method? Class method, which means it belongs to the class. Okay? The class itself. So it could be like this. This is a class method because A is a class and we calling the method on the class. So that's what it means basically to be a class method. If it was an instance method, it would be like this. That's an instance method because an instance is an object of the class. Okay? So we know these three things, and we also know that it takes an argument. It takes an argument base. And the name of the argument is just a name. It can be any valid variable name. So we know these four things. This already tells you a lot about this. Now, the particular functionality of this method, it's called a hook method. And this is part of meta programming, so this is quite advanced, okay? And what this does is when you include, so usually we define this inside a module, right? So you can define classes and you can also define modules like that. I go into this. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, I explain this in not the garbage collector, but it's included and metaprogramming and modules, hook methods, all of that explained in my Ruby book, Ruby Deep Dive. Okay, so I really think that can help you. So basically, we define this inside here, and when we include the method, include a, then this will trigger. So another name for this could be like trigger method, because it's going to happen when we do this. So this method is going to be automatically called when we do this. And base is going to be an argument. What's going to be its value? Well, the value is going to be the object that we are included into. So in this case, object. We're included into object, then base is going to be object. So that's basically what this is. Okay, so what else? I hope that answered your question. Renan, thanks for your question. Did you ever need to manually control this memory management? No, I didn't. If you're having problems like memory leaks or something like that, there are things you can do about that. Like the thing you want to do is, where is your memory going? What's happening? You want like a graph, of your memory over time, right? There are gems and things to do that. You want to graph your memory over time, and you want to see what objects are using this memory and what objects are growing to take this memory. Okay. So you want to make sure that you have a up-to-date version of Ruby, because there have been versions of Ruby on the past that had problems with memory, and you want to make sure that you don't have one of these problematic versions. Okay, if you get the latest version, one of the latest point versions like 2.266, I think that's the latest, or 2.7 something, maybe 2.7.1 or 2.7.2. It's on the website for Ruby. If you get the latest version, then you get that out of the way. Also, look up the tools for graphing your memory over time to seeing your objects, active objects. But generally, you shouldn't have to manually do it. If you have to manually do it, then you have to look at the reason why you think you have to manually do it. Look what problem, where is that coming from? What's the root cause, right? Use a little bit of critical thinking about that issue. So I hope that helps. Yeah, we have another question for Srijan, but before I read that, let me remind you to visit my website, rubyguides.com. Okay, rubyguides.com is my website. It has been going on for many years now. A lot of people enjoy it. I have a newsletter where I send you very interesting Ruby tricks and advice, learning tips, everything that's going to be helpful for you. I also have a book where I explain these things, like the hook methods, like metaprogramming, like modules. What's a module? Why would you use a module instead of a class? Do you know that? If you don't know that, then this won't make sense, because that's a prerequisite to understand that, right? Knowing modules is a prerequisite to knowing include, and knowing include is a prerequisite to fully understanding what it's doing for you. So I explain these kind of things in my book. It also supports me doing this work, because this all I do is I teach Ruby, I help people learn Ruby, I make these videos and these articles. Okay, and you can find that on rubyguides.com. Also, you might want to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you can get more videos like this. Now, so back to the question. Question from Srijan is, can you please talk about using concerns in Ruby? Yes, I can. So concerns are not part of Ruby. Okay, so that's the first thing. They are not part of Ruby itself. It's not part of Ruby programming language. So what are they part of? They're part of Rails, which is different from Ruby. Okay, Rails is a framework. It's like a layer. It's built on top of Ruby. It adds things into Ruby so you can build web applications, so you can do web development easier. So there is that. No concerns. Not that familiar with them, but I don't use them. I just don't have a use for them. Yeah, there is a folder. If you go to some Rails project, there is a folder for concerns. Sign up. Well, not in this. I guess newer versions don't even have concerns folder. But there used to be a concerns folder. I think that's the main thing. I would look up the Rails documentation. I'll look up concern. Here you go. And this they use says this related, in fact, to what I'm explaining. It's what related to everything we covered today. It's related to included, as you can see that included. It's related, and I believe this might be different included than this one. Might be, I'm not sure right now. It's related to modules. It's related to, so this is quite advanced. Okay, so you need a lot of prerequisites to understand concerns. There it is, self-included, right? This is the same thing. So it's saying, okay, so it is saying, normally you would do this, right? But with a concern, you can do this. So basically, it's just cleaner syntax, right? As you can see. The reason to do this, as far as I understand, is that you can create modules that, when included, we add this scope. And you can also have class, you can also add class methods. And the concern basically gives you this included block here, this class method block, and it just makes it easier, because if you don't use this, then you have to do it this way, right? This is a little uglier, because say it's not as clear as this. So that's basically all our concern is, just module that we define this included method for you. And we extend the class methods. So the relationship between include and extend, I explain in my book, is you need all of this background before you can really understand. I could explain it, but to really understand the difference, you need to understand what models are. You need to understand include first before understand extend, right? And class eval that's metaprogramming as well, right? So there's a lot of background information that you need to fully understand this. But the basic idea is this. A concern is just a nicer way to do this kind of module. Why would you want this module? Well, so you can include it. When you include M, in this case, it will give you this scope to your model or wherever you use this. Okay. So you can come here on this page if you want to read this and look at these examples again. This on Ruby on Rails API page. Okay. So what else do we have here? Disturber Night again with the question. Thank you for your participation. Do you recommend using shows to build a graphical user interface? Well, yes and no. I think I'm familiar with shows, but I think it's more of a toy kind of thing. I don't know. I'm just my first impression is not like a proper thing I would use like in a real production project. I don't know. It's just my first impression. I haven't really done much or looked into much into it. But you can try it. There is nothing wrong with that. They do have other options. I think the more a better option is probably using something like GTK. Something like this. Maybe that's a better option. I don't do much into graphical user interfaces. If I could, and I had access to JRuby. This is basically Java and Ruby together. You code in Ruby, but you get to use things from Java, right? And one of the nice things in Java is the Swing framework. And this is a very nice way to make graphical user interfaces. I used this in the past, many years ago. And it's very nice. And you can use this with JRuby. If JRuby is an option, you can go the GTK route. Which I think should be up to date here. So you can try this out and give this a try. So the set of findings, Ruby 2.6, 2.5, 2.6, yeah, it's fairly recent. It doesn't seem to mention latest version, but it's fairly recent. And I see there is a comment. So the first thing I do when I go into a GitHub repository is I look latest commit to see if this active project. Also, you can look at releases, issues, pull requests, right? You don't just want to work with any whatever project or gem that you find. You can also look at the stars for popularity if you want an extra signal. So that's probably what I would do. I think this sounds a cutie gem, which you can give a try to, but there is no release since a long time, although I see a recent comment, so I don't know about that. Probably I will try this first for a graphical user interface. Yeah, Candy +1 random bonus. Yeah, I already talked about that. Candy. So you might want to watch the replay because I already talked about the garbage collector. Is there a specific thing that you want to know about it? So I already talked about it here. See? Any other questions? You have any other questions? Type them in the chat, or you can just say hi. Say hi. I'm from wherever you are. From wherever you are. I'm from Spain, for example. You can just say hi. You can ask a question. You can share some code, some project you're working, and we feature your project on the stream, and we take a look together at your project. Don't be afraid of that. Just tell me your GitHub username and the name of the project if you can't post links. Just waiting for any questions to come in. If not, I guess I'm going to end the stream. Or I could just leave it open for a bit and check questions from time to time. That's also an option. I will have to go back to work now. Okay. Have fun and good luck with that. Hope you guys will. You have a productive work session. Do you have the schedule for these streams? No, I don't have a schedule right now for streams. But if I do a stream, it's going to be around this time of the day, right? Okay. I don't know where you are located, but it's going to be whenever I stream. It's going to be around this time of the day. The specific days of the week, I'm not sure yet. It's going to be also you might want to if you subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe, there's a bell icon, notification bell, that lets you know when I go live. If you have notifications enabled for the channel. Thanks. I want to talk more with you about Ruby and programming in general. We contact you on LinkedIn. Okay. Yeah, you can add me in LinkedIn. Okay, great. Hope to see you in the next video or next stream then. So right now I already went for like 2 hours. So I already covered pretty much. I answered a lot of questions. I covered what I wanted to cover. So if you have any questions, if about Ruby learning, whatever, you want to chat, you want to you say hi, then don't be shy. Just type in the comments. We read your comments. Or you want to share your Ruby project, so we can take a look. So yeah. So well, I'm waiting for your comments. So yeah, thank you. You're welcome. So what are you working on? Any projects or anything? What could we do? What could we do? Something. Yeah, fibers are interesting. Hello. Hello, Lin Nguyen. How are you? Do you have a Ruby question? Or what Ruby questions do you have? taking Ruby, Rails, learning, whatever questions you have. I already covered most of the content I had for today, so just waiting for any questions you might have or anything you want to know about Ruby. Can you talk about Lambda? Yes, we just talk about that. Basically, Lambdas, well, that was a while ago. Lambdas are here. I will have procs and lambdas. They're very similar. This is a lambda, right? Lambda has specific syntax, which is different from many other things in Ruby. And basically, it looks like this. It's like an arrow. It's just a dash and the symbol. It looks like this arrow. Then we have an argument. Arguments just work like methods. You can have no arguments or any other arguments that you want. And then we have a block. And inside the block we have some code, right? And if I take this particular lambda, and you can tell it's a lambda, it says right there, lambda, right? You see that? Well, to use it, there are different ways to use it, and one is with square brackets, and in here we pass our argument. So for example, if I pass 5, what do you think this will do? Well, 5 comes into here, so this x becomes 5, so basically this becomes 5 times 2, so we get 10, right? No surprise there. Same thing, if I put 15 into this lambda, what happens? Well, x becomes 15, so this becomes 15 times 2, so we get 50. There we go. Inside the lambda, basically what this is what we call an anonymous method. So it's like a method that doesn't have to have a name. It doesn't have a name. So methods, when you define method with the f, we create the method, right? And we give it a name, like cat. And inside the method is where you would do this, right? You would do these things, whatever that is. And that's a method, and you call it with the name. This case, I get this error because there is cat inside pry, apparently. But yeah, this is expected to be 10, so we can do big cat. How about that? Now if I do big cat, works as expected, right? So you get 10. But this, notice this, there is no name. Here name is big cat, and here is no name. But we can assign it to a variable. Assigning it to a variable allows you to save it for later, or you can use this with Rails scopes and use a lambda so the scope knows what to do, right? So if you don't know what the scope is, fine, you will learn about that later as you learn more Rails. but that's where one place where you use these lambdas. It's just like a method. It behaves basically like a method, but it has no name and it has different syntax, and it has different form of calling it with these square brackets, or there are other ways to do it. I go into more details in my Ruby book here. Ruby Deep Dive is on rubyguides.com, where you will find more details. But with this basic knowledge, you should be able to go into Pry or RV and practice. Okay, just try out things. That's the best way. Once you are exposed to the concept and have basic understanding. Thanks. Yeah, you're welcome. Let's see. Are there any other Ruby questions? By the way, if you want to make sure that you find me when I go live or when I post a new video, you want to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Enable notifications, so you will know when I go live, which I don't have a fixed schedule for, so you will need to be notified. Also when I upload new videos, or pre-recorded videos. Oh, that's a good one. Sony's NAF, competitive coding or programming with Ruby. There is no tutorials for Ruby inbuilt methods. Okay, that's a good one. There's actually plenty of tutorials if you go to rubyguides.com, which happens to be my website. You can find for all kinds of methods. Here you can understand methods related to working with directories. That's a method. Entries, for example. You can find about how self works. You can find about fibers. You can find new methods in Ruby 2.7. You can find other methods. I will have one called Ruby strings. You can find here Ruby string methods, whole mega articles, many Ruby like match, to I, join. And in the book, it's all about explain a lot about methods and how to find them very easily, right from your terminal. You don't even need a specific to go to a specific page. You can find information about methods directly from your terminal. You should make a playlist with learning Ruby in a good way. We have playlists. I cover different methods and things. If you go to like my channel page, you should be able to find my playlist. Also, for competitive programming, you want to learn about algorithms, data structures, and time complexity, something called time complexity. And I cover all of that in the blog. If you go to like Outpost, you can find this. So definitely read for competitive programming in Ruby. Okay. So this time complexity for Ruby developers. Okay. I also have about recursion. I have about many other topics. Recursion. I have articles for stack data structure. Have an article for queues, queue data structure. Have article for hashes. Have a lot. So there is that. Algorithms in Ruby, I have that too. I have a video about how to sort. I also have an article about how to write what is called a sorting algorithm, a quicksort. I explain how to write quicksort, and I also explain binary search. It's pretty much everything I cover between the videos on the channel, between the book, and between all of the articles. They're way more than 150 now. They're like 170. So I haven't updated that because I kind of like the number 150. It's more round. It's like in the middle kind of thing. Yeah. Is there no inbuilt queue, hash map, all these things in Ruby? Yes, there is queue, there is hash, there is no stack, but you can use an array. I teach you how to use an array. So we have definitely built-in queue, but there is some particularly about this queue. This queue is more for, because it's a blocking queue, it's more for what is called network and file programming, because it's blocking queue. And we have built-in hash, of course array, which is also data structure. We have sets, that's a very important data structure built in. You have to do require set though, require, but you don't need to install anything. It's standard library. We have a stack as array. It's array push form. Let's see. We have I think that's about it. There are no trees. If you're looking for trees, there are no trees. There are no graphs, but there are gems for making. There are no linked lists. And of course, if there are no trees, there are also no balanced trees. And there are no heaps, which are also a form of tree. So everything that's a form of tree, like graphs, branch trees, binary search trees, all of these are not built in, but there are Ruby gems that implement those for you. Yeah, but the built-in, you'll find this. like C++ hash. Well, I don't know how the C++ hash, but we have just regular hash. That's plenty, I find. For what you want a hash to be, that's plenty. It does everything that you would expect out of a hash. So I don't know what kind of operation and time complexity you're looking for, because this hash has it. You can do there is your hash. Then you can find keys and values. It just works. Right? You can get values, get the keys. I never had any. I never found anything missing for Ruby's hash. Very complete, has the performance characteristics that you would expect, has the operations that you would expect. It even allows for default values, which is very powerful. I explain, of course, I know I already mentioned the book multiple times, but I explain this in the book too. How to use default values and some mistakes that you can make with default values if you don't really understand what's happening. And of course, what's the solution to that? Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. I think I'm done for today. Make sure to subscribe if you want to find me live and interact and chat with me. Okay? Thanks a lot for watching, and take care, stay safe. I will see you in the next video.